Good day everyone, and welcome to the channel. It's Londononion here with another Back for Blood critical comparison. And the weapons we'll be comparing and contrasting today are the AA12 and the Super 90 shotguns. Now just some housekeeping before we dissect these weapons. It is important to state the parameters of this critical comparison. First, because of the versatility of deck builds such as the ones that precede this video, weapons can be morphed into variants that increase strengths or balance out needs according to one's playstyle and will only complicate the comparison. So deck build potential will be of minimal consideration. Second, comparison will take place under two main themes: bare bones and fully kitted, which will be explained as we go through the comparison. Lastly, the weapons will be compared based on their common rarity, just for consistency and simplicity. However, I am aware that performance scaling between rarities may create different results if compared at higher levels. At the end, I will state my preference, and I would encourage anybody with opposing or agreeable views to share which of the two weapons they prefer and why. With that, let us get started. To begin our comparison, we're first going to be analyzing the weapons from a bare bones perspective, meaning absolutely no attachments or modifiers of any kind. As usual, we always look at the stats of our weapons first to have a brief, though incomplete, idea of how these weapons may perform. Looking at these two weapons, the Super 90 is stated to outperform the AA12 in firepower and handling by 10 and 5 units respectively. However, for those who were present during our previous comparisons, you'll know that weapon stats may not be true to the performance of the weapon. Now, a stark difference between both weapons is that the AA12 is automatic, while the Super 90 is a semi-automatic, but can still fire rather quickly. When looking at the weapons deplete their shells at their greatest possible rate, it does not take strict observation to notice that the AA12 is the clear winner in fire rate. However, it is important to consider the damage difference, as this may be a compensating aspect in the Super 90's favor. Both weapons have congruent effective ranges, so damage differences won't be sensitive to this regard, though this will have an effect later on. So while in the maximum effective range, or 2 meters, each shotgun issues out 8 pellets. 7 pellets will inflict the same damage while 1 inflicts significantly more. In the Super 90's case, the weaker pellets inflict 8.8 units of damage while the outlier inflicts 17.8. The AA12, on the other hand, will deliver the same damage for its weaker pellets. However, its outlier pellet inflicts 13.8 units of damage. All other aspects being equal, the Super 90 is superior shot for shot. But with damage over time, it will not take much Einstein math to understand that the AA12 will still come out on top with superior damage after 6 rounds, since the Super 90 will begin its reloading animation. Meanwhile, the AA12 will continue to fire away. Even if the weapons were to fire at congruent rates, the volume of the AA12 would still overtake the Super 90. Focusing particularly on the outlier pellets, after 6 rounds, the Super 90 will inflict a maximum of 106.8 damage units, while the AA12 will inflict 165.6 damage units after 12 rounds. And with a faster fire rate, there is no passing the AA12 in damage over time. Unfortunately, reload speeds are barely comparable, since the Super 90 reloads 1 shell at a time, while the AA12 reloads via magazine. Regardless, the Super 90 will take longer to reload completely, provided that the use of animation interruptions aren't being used. The one advantage that the Super 90 has over the AA12 in terms of round dissemination is its flexibility. At any point during the reload process, one can fire the weapon as a quick defense response. The AA12, on the other hand, is far more rigid in that the reload process must be complete before one can fire again. This is technically not a stat area of discussion, but it is worth something, and we will touch back on this later. Carrying on, the accuracy of the weapons are stated to be the same. However, when switching between the weapons, a small difference can be noted in the crosshair spacing, similar to that of applying an uncommon level laser sight. Ultimately, tighter crosshairs means a tighter spread for shotguns. As far as I've been able to test out, the shot spreads of the weapons have marginal differences. From 10 meters away, without ADS, both weapons firing 12 rounds, their performances are similar. However, the Super 90 had never connected less than 2 pellets. The AA12, on the other hand, infrequently managed to strike only 1 pellet from 10 meters away without ADS. But I would consider this an extremely small advantage in accuracy. In combat, this is likely negligible. Similarly with handling, both weapons have negligible recoil, and there is barely a noticeable difference in performance. Moving on to the fully kitted side of the comparison, weapons will be dressed and discussed based on their attachments of need, since the attachments are consistent and will garner the same results if the weapons are dressed congruently. The practical use of the weapon, however, is where the heart of the discussion is. A fully kitted weapon, meaning all purple or higher attachments, will garner very different results for each weapon. Now, in this onion's opinion, adding attachments to a weapon is mainly about compensating for its shortcomings rather than competing with another weapon of comparison. So starting off with the barrel attachments, it may seem intuitive to use a long barrel to extend the effective range, and a case can probably be made for this. However, as shotguns, their effective range is not necessarily meant to be high. Plus, even with the highest level long barrel, both weapons won't be able to reliably dish out maximum damage from outside the danger zone, or 10 meters. So instead, I see it being more beneficial to use laser sights to tighten the spread and make them more reliable for firing without ADS. Yes, the effective range is still in the toilet, but they will be tighter and more consistent for both ridden and mutations. So I would dress both weapons with laser sights. As for mag attachments, both weapons will have different requirements based on their attributes. Looking at the Super 90 first, the main attribute of mag attachments I would focus on is increasing reload speed, since it is not a magazine weapon. However, if looking at gold attachments, I would prioritize either extended fast mag or fast HP mag. Increasing the mag capacity is a significant need, but not more than reload speed, since there are only 6 rounds and the weapon can fire rather quickly. The stumble is mainly for mutations, and when mixed with fast reload, the Super 90 will have an easier time taking on mutations without having to sacrifice more space for kiting purposes, and ultimately decrease stress. As for the AA12, I would choose extended fast mag or a purple extended mag, which would pretty much make the weapon unstoppable in the face of mutations and increase its overall combat effectiveness just with sheer volume. The sights are a controversial area, since they will ultimately depend on one's use of the weapons and their card selections. Making a shotgun build that ignores ADS is rather common and will influence what kind of sights are used, so this is an area I can't really dictate. The stocks of both weapons will also depend on style. However, I would argue that fewer users would prefer to maximize ADS over swap speed, so a light tactical stock or its lower level variants that prioritize swap speed is what I would go for. Now, there are some practical aspects that require attention. Earlier we had discussed the reload speeds of both weapons. The Super 90 has a more frequent and manual reload animation. However, during any point of its reload process, one can interrupt and fire. This naturally makes the weapon more flexible and fire-ready than the rigid and quote-unquote all-in AA12. However, this seems to be the sacrifice for capacity. The Super 90 is more of a ridden and longevity-oriented shotgun. Meanwhile, the AA12 is more of a mutations and climactic-oriented shotgun. The deficiencies of both weapons can be rectified with a proper deck build, but that is outside the purview of this discussion. Moving on to my verdict, from a bare-bones perspective, I would say the AA12 takes the win. For fully kitted, I would say the gap in performance is significantly smaller, and both weapons can be successful. And the deciding factor here is prioritizing the role of shotguns, and that is carnage at close range. With this in mind, I give the edge to the AA12 again. If the ridden were far more dangerous than mutations, then I would give it to the Super 90. But its flexibility, though useful and advantageous under particular circumstances, deviates from what I consider to be the main role of a shotgun. Now, I know deck builds can make alternative possibilities, but because of how versatile decks can be, that is a conversation far too complex for a discussion like this. But I'd love to hear from you guys as to what your take is on this comparison. Do you prefer the Super 90 or the AA12? And if there are any disagreements, I welcome critical discussion, so feel free to leave your opinion on this comparison. But otherwise, that concludes the discussion. Thank you guys for joining me on this one, and in our next video, we'll be comparing the RPK and the M249 LMGs. It's been Londononion, and I will see you guys next time.